Hello and welcome to the Satluj Podcast. The definition of the word acquiescence is subtle but powerful. It basically means to accept something without protest. It's subtle because it slips into existence almost unnoticed. It's powerful because the consequences can be literally catastrophic. We saw acquiescence in 1930s Germany before people woke up to find it was too late. We've seen it in Myanmar, in Yugoslavia and other nations where unprotesting acceptance of a regime's behaviour led on to literal genocides. And now acquiescence has quietly slipped into the governance of India. Well, to warn of the danger facing India and by extension the rest of the world, I'm joined today by a regular guest, Dr. Gurinder Singh Grewal, MD. Dr. Grewal, welcome. Thank you for joining us once again today.
Thank you, Angus. Good morning. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Happy New Year again to your Satluj TV audience. So what we would like to talk is from fringe rhetoric to normalize intimidation, a historical warning. So what is happening in India? Many people sense intuitively, but hesitate to say out loud, although some people are talking about it. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it does rhyme. And when it rhymes, it usually begins quietly, not with the tanks in the streets, not with formal declarations, but with words, silence, and permission. So, silence and permission, this is what is the frustration we have. The word is silence and giving permission to what is happening in India. So in recent weeks, events in Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh, not far from Delhi, have once again forced a difficult question into the open. Are we witnessing isolated provocation or a deeper, more dangerous pattern? So let's start with the facts. What actually happened? Videos and local reporting confirmed that in Ghaziabad, a group calling itself Hindu Rakshadal publicly distributed swords and other weapons, which also can be used as agriculture instruments like sickles, etc. So this is not a rumor. This is not a social media exaggeration. Police arrested several individuals connected to this distribution, citing public safety and law and order concerns. That action is real and it is important. But arrests alone do not answer the deeper question, because after some time they will be let go. Well-known controversial religious figure, another similar leader of Rakshadal, Yati Narsingh Anand, was reported as saying something far more alarming. He reportedly declared that swords are not enough and suggested that Hindus should form an organization like ISIS. ISIS is what America is fighting in the Middle East. So let's pause here. Invoking ISIS, a globally designated terrorist organization, is not a metaphorical language. It is not cultural symbolism. It is explicitly militant rhetoric. In a country already understained from religious polarization, this kind of language is not just provocation, it is dangerous. Predictably, there was outrage, debate, condemnation, and yet something else happened as well. Denial, distance, and silence. We are told correctly that these were the fringe voices, that these statements do not represent official policy. Opposition leader respond sharply. Akhilesh Yadav spoke on, he's an opposition leader, spoke of an environment of anarchy. Congress MP Manikam Tagore pointed toward the ideological climate shaped by RSS, even while acknowledging the absence of written orders or direct evidence. You know, this is the specialty RSS. They can deny anything. They don't disclose who's a member. There's most of the things they do are hard to trace. But when you listen to them, their ideology, then you can find the link. And this is where our analysis begins. Because political science does not look for confessions, it looks for patterns. And the patterns are similar. The dual track strategy. Across many countries, many eras, extremist or majoritarian movements have followed a dual track strategy. At the top, formal deniability, like government will do, RSL will do. Procedural language, silence or delay distancing, like Modi has been silenced and what happened in Manipur, other places, what happened in Christmas. At the base, informal mobilization, provocative rhetoric, symbolic intimidation. So, yes, they are silent, but they are also encouraging, like Modi did in his speech on August 15th, when he admired RSS. This allows leaders to say they do not represent us, mean the people who are committing the crime, they don't represent us. They always will deny, while never clearly breaking ideological ties. When violence or hate erupts, a response often sounds like this: the law will take its course. This was an isolated incident. We condemn violence in general. So these are their strategy. What is usually missing is a moral rejection of the ideology itself. This is what scholars call consistent asymmetry. Extremism flows in one direction. Accountability flows selectively. And over time, this asymmetry changes social expectation. What once shocked people become routine. So when this kind of incident happen every day, I think people somehow don't necessarily become immune. They get accustomed to listening and try to forget. What once required apology begins to require explanation. Eventually, it requires nothing at all. This is not conspiracy. This is a structure, and history is full of it. Let's examine what happened in Germany. Nazi Germany at its height, but before. In 1928 to 1933, Nazis party did not seize power through immediate state terror. Street violence was carried out by SA, they call brown shirts, technically outside the formal state. Leadership maintained plausible deniability. Courts acted selectively. Police enforcement was uneven. Violence was framed as defensive reaction against minorities, against humiliation, against chaos. Here's the key mechanism: silence but selective condemnation because tactic authorization. Each incident widened the boundary of what was acceptable. Each act tested how far things could go. Eventually, the state did not restrain the militants, it absorbed them. And by the time the world realized what was happening, it was too late. So this is exactly what is happening in India. So in Myanmar, Yugoslavia, Sri Lanka, these patterns are not uniquely European. In Myanmar, Buddhist nationalists, monks, and civil society actors spread dehumanizing rhetoric against Rohingya Muslims. They described this as local clashes, security forces arrived late, or nothing was done. Violence was outsourced to social actors and sanitized by bureaucracy until mass displacement followed. In Yugoslavia, paramilitaries were called, volunteers, leadership denied, command responsibility. Media saturated the public sphere with grievance and narrative long before war began. Let's look in Sri Lanka. Cultural nationalism was embedded in law. Anti-Tamil violence was framed as spontaneous public anger. Police often stood aside. Reconciliation was promised that ideology was untouched. Across all these cases, one lesson repeats. Genocidal and pogrom systems rarely begin with orders, they begin with permission. So let's state one second. The genocidal and pogrom system rarely begin with orders, so the people at the top can deny. They begin with permission. Why India must be understood structurally, this brings back to India. The issue is not command and control violence. The issue is systematic tolerance. Since 2002 and increasingly after 2014, 2019, recurring pattern is visible. Ideological affiliates act first, leadership responds with silence or procedural language, hate speech laws are enforced unevenly, each incident slightly widens the boundary. So like hate speech laws are enforced unevenly. Look at the parliament member from Punjab is in jail for not really committing any crime. He won, Amritpal won by the most votes than any other constituency. He's in jail. They won't even give him bail to attend the parliament. On the other hand, in Manipur, they were a Hindu organization. They were given weapons by police. They attacked the Christians. Then they were arrested by the police. The charges were that they broke the police station and took the weapon. And they were given the bail same day. They never broke the police station. Police gave them the weapon. So this is how it's unevenly applied. Each incident slightly widened the boundary. This ecosystem shaped by ideological reach of the RSS and the political dominance of BJP, which is a political wing of RSS, while preserving formal deniability at the top. Danger is not over state-sponsored terror. The danger is a permissive environment where extremist rhetoric flourishes and perpetrators are learned that consequences are unlimited. Why is matter to the West? India is not an isolated country. It is a strategic democratic partner. History shows that early tolerance or majoritarian intimidation often precedes international crisis, refugee flows, regional instability, and long-term reputational damage. History also shows something else. Since from democratic allies is rarely interpreted as silence from the democratic allies is rarely interpreted as a neutrality. It is interpreted as silence. Cost of early engagement is small. So what I'm trying to say, if Western countries, the powerful country like US will do something now, the cost is very small. Cost of delayed regret is catastrophic when millions will be killed or die, just like what happened in Germany. Conclusion, history teaches us that societies do not descend into authoritarian violence suddenly. They slide through silence, through normalization, through selective enforcement. These were the conditions that preceded Germany's collapse before the Second World War. The current trajectory in India presents a credible risk of similar deterioration if unchecked. Early principled engagement by free society is not interference. It is a responsibility. So now India will say, oh, you are interfering to the Western countries. No, it is not interference. It's the responsibility of the civilized people and civilized government. It is a memory. And it is the lesson history keeps trying to teach us before it's too late. For Western democracy, especially the United States, this is a test of credibility, not convenience. History shows that greatest failures were not of knowledge, but of will. As warning signals were recognized, yet ignored in the same strategic patience. India's current trajectory does not call for hysteria, but for early principled action through diplomatic pressure, targeted sanctions against enablers of hate, and clear public defense of minority rights. Waiting for unmistakable catastrophe would repeat the gravest mistake of the 20th century, preventing democratic erosion and protecting religious minorities is not interference but a responsibility owed by free society that claim to have learned from the history. So what I'm saying is it's a very dangerous situation. It is a time for the free world Western government to do something, speak up, take action before it's too late.
Thank you, Dr. Grewal. That was particularly interesting and very relevant to certainly recent history. And a question for you, Dr. Grewal. You talk about this dual track strategy. It is deeply effective. It is a dangerous strategy that is very effective because I suppose the English phrase is when you boil a lobster, the lobster does not realise it is being boiled alive until it is too late. And that is effectively how this strategy works. It is, as I said in the introduction, it uses this word acquiescence. The BJP government is allowing these extremists to go about their activities targeting the minorities. But if the minorities fight back with any form of similar extremism, then of course that is clamped down. So this, and again, I say it's very subtle and it's very powerful because normal, decent people, intelligent people fall for this. You mentioned Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was full of very intelligent, well-educated people who did not realise what was going on. They sensed maybe something, but it was just not quite enough to do anything about it. So my question to you, Dr. Grewal, how can we combat this? Firstly, of course, domestically in India, many people are not awake to it. Now, people like yourself are, but most of the people, even intelligent people, are easily dismissing this. But even on the international stage, the key players are maybe equally dismissing this problem because they say, oh, it's just small, they're only small things. Now, if there was one obvious big incident, let's call it a mass event that took a huge step forward of draconian authoritarianism, then yes, that's easy to identify. But these very subtle incremental steps are, by definition, very hard to identify, as was in the case of Germany. So how do you think, domestically and globally, firstly, we can make these nations and people aware of what's going on, and how can we prevent what ultimately is a very effective strategy on behalf of the RSS?
I think the Western governments or the people in Western countries, which includes you and me, should not accept everything India presents on the face value, or they are very nice, they are Gandhi's people, they live in harmony and they have equality and all the nonsense. And then they have this yoga exercise. So they're presenting softer version of India and getting away with the deception. But inside, what they are committing atrocities on minorities, and there's no religious freedom, no freedom of speech, and all those human rights violations with the blessing of the government. You know, silence by the government, giving permission is the same as accountability. So I think this deception need to be realized and some action need to be taken. And on the other hand, minorities, I think minorities need to stand together, unite together, and stand up for their rights and not wait till one minority is killed and then the second is killed. And like in Germany, they say when they came for Jews, there were nobody left to speak. So I think the responsibility is also for the people who are suffering to stand up and not let it happen. But the responsibility of Western governments, which believe in democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, whatever, the human rights, the same thing written in US Constitution, same thing in United Nations Charter. But when it comes to who's violating it, who's applying that, this is not uniformly applied, or government don't uniformly act because of many reasons, their interest in trade and etc. But then sooner or later they will have to act. Look, India is participating in Ukraine, helping the Russian. They help Israel in Gaza. They are supplying narcotic precursors, killing people. They're supplying drugs in Western Africa and Angola, where people are dying. So, on the surface, they're Gandhi's country, but they are the worst. I think they are the worst. They need to be, in my view, they almost meet the criteria of a terrorist state. I don't know why word, because the terrorist state is recognized when they do terrorism internationally. I think this transnational repression is international terrorism. What they did in Canada, England, and Lahore, that's international terrorism. It's well documented. They paid $10 million to Afghans to commit murders of Kashmiris and Sikh in Pakistan. So this, I am not a political scholar. From what I read, the writing is on the wall. It's people to accept it and do something about it, or wait till it's too late. I think the time is now, and minorities, Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, Dalits need to combine their power, stand together, and fight this monster.
Indeed, very wise words. But there we must leave it. But we will be talking again with Dr. Grewal soon to continue our discussion. Dr. Grewal, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, Angus. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.